Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Benoist, a technology research specialist working for NATIXIS in London. And it is my pleasure today to introduce this new webinar session in partnership with Audacia on the fascinating topic of the new space economy, live from the beautiful BPC studio here in Paris. When I was about 4 or 5, I told you I was going to talk about my mother woke me up one evening just to show me live television footage of the first space shuttle gliding back to Earth and successfully landing in California after a space mission. I was truly amazed. I remember this really vividly. You know, I was immediately had a sense of being in front of something truly extraordinary, truly unique, being given a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to, witness the greatness of humankind. It was in 1981. The Cold War was still raging. No doubt the Soviets were watching the same images as me, with a great deal of interest and concern. Space really had something dangerous and mysterious about it. Its secrets were closely guarded by a small elite of professional scientists and astronauts, and of course government agencies seeking to exploit its secrets for strategic and geopolitical purposes. Now, fast forward 45 years, and a company like SpaceX is basically organizing last week the first private spacewalk involving a non-professional crew, and well, nobody's that amazed anymore. You know, it looks like we've really entered a phase of democratization of space, where going into orbit is almost like a natural thing to do. And accessibility of space has increased so dramatically. Between 2018 and 2023, more satellites have been launched in the skies than in the previous 60 years of the space industry. Now, we all use these fancy electronic gadgets. We all have these smart, connected, GPS-enabled watches to clock our Sunday morning run in the park, connect to the outside world without giving much thought about it. But the truth is, without realizing, space is actually becoming part of our everyday life. It's infiltrating slowly but surely a very large number of economic sectors, from telecoms to retail, e-commerce, agriculture, and even finance and insurance. Little by little, we have a small but very dynamic ecosystem of small innovators emerging alongside traditional incumbents to push the boundaries of our scientific knowledge, to push the boundaries of our technological mastery, and to offer all these services, on Earth. And beyond the commercial success of these companies, what's really remarkable is that they truly have a very profound and very far-reaching societal impact, with many very important, meaningful applications ranging from education to land economy, to food security, and even climate change mitigation. Now, according to the World Economic Forum, the new space economy is a $1.8 trillion opportunity that will keep growing 9% per year until 2035, which is well above global GDP growth rates. To put it in perspective, that is similar in size and dynamics to the entire semiconductor market after the introduction of generative AI. So we will delve today into this mesmerizing world. We will look into the recent evolution of its main players. We will also address the challenges of sustainably building and growing this ecosystem, both from a technological and a financial perspective. And for this, I'm joined today by an excellent panel of experts. I'll start with you, Gianluigi Baldesi. You are head of the Ventures and Financing Office at the European Space Agency. You are basically supporting and boosting investment in the European space ecosystem. We then have Stanislas Maximin, founder and CEO at Latitude, which is a French startup specializing in the design and manufacture of a very competitive launch vehicle for small satellite missions. Charles Beigbeder, you are expansion chairman at Audacia, a pan-European private venture capital company dedicated to Europe's rising new space and new air mobility sectors. And finally, Olivier Larangot, you are head of corporate venture capital at Aéroports de Paris. Ladies and gentlemen, please remember you can ask your questions in the sidebar on your screens. We shall try to answer most of them before the end of this session. If not, if we are running out of time, we'll do that after the session. So please do leave your details so we can get back to you. That's it. Are we ready, guys? Do we have liftoff? Let's check. Let's check out. So my first question will go to you, Gianluigi. You know, basically, we're all talking about this new space economy, but between new and old space economy, what is so different, and how have, you know, the players evolved in those last few years?
I mean, thank you so much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to share my thought, and really looking forward also to have a lively discussion here with actually quite a player in Stanislas on the new space. So, I mean, let's say, what is an old space, what is a new space? There's been a lot of internal, let's say, change at the European Space Agency. It's a fact, as you said in your introduction, that today there is the space, so to launch a satellite in space is very, very simple. There is opportunity often. The cost are really reduced. But moreover, the technology allows us to bring in space a lot of more power, a lot of more opportunities, data. And this, together with also the effect of the digital transformation, has allowed a lot of young companies to, let's say, to send a satellite in orbit, start taking pictures, they start to generate some services. And this has been also following by the large, let's say, development that has been driven by Elon Musk and all the billionaires and that have been pumping a lot of capital. In this context, what we realize is somehow that the entry barrier for an investor are reduced, and therefore we see more and more interest from the financial sector to enter into the space. What is also, this is somehow is a consequence, but what is really the driving of all this change is also that the fact that since investors are entering into the sector, also companies are pushed to get a return, to start generating revenues. Consequently, they are less interested in, let's say, developing the best service, but they are interested more to generate a service which is robust or it's risk adverse towards, let's say, the business side and not the technology side. Therefore, what is very interesting and what we are reflecting a lot is really how the new space companies are managing the risk during the development. And this is key for us. And so this is what we are seeing a lot in Europe. And moreover, we are at the European Space Agency, of course. We support the creation of company with incubation. We support the technical development of, let's say, of potential businesses across an early phase in all the sector. And moreover, we are also placing more and more service contract where we are helping company to generate revenue. And in this respect, we also open my office somehow that it's really helping investor to enter into space. We try to facilitate the de-risking of the investment, providing the technical know-how at the service of the community.
Right. Okay, so if we look now into the main, let's say, use case or use cases that have been, put forward over the past few years. I mean, people I think have in mind things of scientific interest and the experiments that are happening in the ISS, for instance. But as I was saying in introduction, space goes far beyond space itself. And where do you see, maybe Charles, where do you see the the most interesting use cases in this industry at the moment?
I will try to prioritize because it's a vast question. But first, I think you said it's about democratizing access to space. You said its barriers to entry are being lowered down. It's just that space is becoming a normal place to do business. basically. That's why, at Audacia, which is the private equity firm that I founded like 20 years ago, and which mission is to accompany, support entrepreneurs that want to grow, which I think we have some here. Well, we decided to launch this venture capital fund dedicated to this new space arena, because there is a huge opportunity. And of course, we have the example coming from the States, but in Europe, for instance, I have personally met like 250 entrepreneurs, European entrepreneurs, and we have like 450 in our database that we follow carefully. It's just incredible. It's a Cambrian explosion, but it's not. So it's boiling. It's not a bubble. And they have many ideas. And the use case, so you name them. It's about geolocalization, geoconnectivity, geointelligence. So monitoring climate change and with all frequencies using satellites in orbit. And it's immense. The potential is immense because the optics are much more efficient and cheaper than before, because the microprocessors are the same thing, because of reutilization of materials, of equipment. So the cost of us, we don't send anymore a satellite costing $1 billion at in geostationary position. We send, well, you will send satellites costing $1 or $2 million, but you will send dozens of them. And okay, SpaceX is doing that at the moment. So it changed completely the equation. So we are there to support entrepreneurs so that's why we have in this new space, sphere, there are a lot. The people are quitting, big groups. I'm not criticizing the big groups, but it's true that maybe there was a kind of it was maybe a rich man club with a different, let's say, economic equation. With the big groups in Europe, in the States, working with the big agencies on programs, long-term programs. Now it's completely different. And so some people are quitting their comfortable job at big groups and created their firms. Some younger guys, crazy, are not finishing their school, engineering school or commercial school, and founding their firm. That's great. And they want to manufacture satellites. They want to manufacture rockets and operate constellations to provide all those services. So,
right. So we'll hear the full story about Latitude in a second. But Olivier, at Aéroports de Paris, yes. you mentioned a few interesting use cases on which you've actually invested and worked.
Yes, exactly, because we're talking as well about the big groups, but the big groups are still looking for innovative things. I think we are very pragmatic, for example, at ADP, because we are all about testing and learning from our experimentation. And at the end, we have this corporate venture capital fund that continue the experimentation by financing some of very interesting startups. And at first, when you look at the group ADP strategy, you don't see space. We are not a space group. We are an airport group. And the first question that I have this morning when I say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to be with some people from space today," what ADP is doing in space. And in fact, it's about the use case, because we had this use case coming from space, actually. We attack the space from a climate perspective. And we have very interesting solution on the Earth observation from space. And the salvation of the whole airport industry and more the airspace industry, it's to be clean by 2050. And we think we can find some of the solution to diminish our footprint within the airport industry. And we got few use cases, such as monitoring the emission on the ground from space. And there's a lot of way to do that. You can do either with sensor or either with image from the sky. And this one is very interesting because you don't have to deploy so much sensor on the ground. So very easily by monitoring some image from the sky, you can determine where the emissions are coming from. And this is a very interesting point for us because we can track where our emissions are coming from and where we can act on them. Someone say that you can manage only what you can measure, and from that perspective, we have this use case for now for the climate change within ADP.
That's super interesting. So we constantly hear that all the money that is spent in space would be better spent on Earth. There's this idea, that's a general idea. You probably have to basically justify yourself all the time against that particular feeling, right? And do you think that's still around, or is it actually changing now? Do you think people are changing their minds, Stan?
Well, no, it's a very interesting topic. No, I'm not sure people are changing their mind because I think the debates are becoming more and more, one-sided, and so and more extreme every time. However, the interests and the impact of space data and space information, basically, space is not changing climate change, but space is giving us every bit of data we need to act on climate change. Gianluigi, you perhaps have more data than me on this, but I think if you remove our satellites from the sky, if you stop sending them, we basically cannot track climate change. We cannot track polluers. We can't track anything. And it's not only these, it's also the fight against contraband, it's the fight against pirates, it's the fight against many, many other things on Earth. And it's also optimization, and optimization leads to massive gains also for companies, but also massive gains to reduce carbon footprint. So no, I'm not sure it's changing in the mind of the people. I think people are seeing space still as what you said, people going into space. And it's perhaps like not even 10% of the space industry right now. And I think 10% is even way too much. I think it's probably around 1 or 2% of the whole investment in the space industry. Most space money goes into satellites, and these satellites create data that are being used by groups like ADP over the world.
There's also I would say, a side topic here, which is that many people see space a little bit as a, dual use, military use thing, defense, some things that are, not really that positive in general, I would say. And how difficult is it for you guys who are investing in the sector? How are your clients, talking to you about these specific problems? Is that something that you have to deal with all the time?
No, on the contrary. Well, we are in a new world. Everyone understands that we have to increase our innovation level to be prepared for the threat, and that means deep tech. That means access to space, of course, space technologies. And they so provide data to and use case for the private sector, but also for the security forces. Fine, and that means that it will be more difficult for a crazy guy heading a nation to do stupid things, because that increase the barrier of entry of those guys. Military security needs innovation, deep tech, and that is a way to defend ourselves.
And we've seen the importance of Elon Musk's SpaceX satellites in the conflict in Ukraine, for instance.
Yeah, although they were rapidly neutralized by the Russians, but okay.
Is that something? What is your take on this?
My stance is exactly the same as Charles. We live in a world where we cannot afford to question ourselves about, do we need that data? The data that we produce every day from space basically saved Ukraine from a certain death and invasion in a few days. That data is knowledge, and that knowledge is what is actually giving Ukraine a chance to fight off an invasion on European soil. So the question is, do we want to keep our freedom? If the answer is yes, build satellites, take pictures, and build all the capabilities that we have to not only see enemy's tanks and assets, but also kind of, how to say it nicely, to also give all the chance we have to deactivate them, right? Neutralize them.
To add on this point, I mean, what is also what we see is that space is becoming a new field where, let's say, conflict are happening. Even in space, we see more and more spy satellite getting close to a civil, commercial satellite of another nation's satellite. There is this new trend of in-orbit servicing, which is basically, the possibility of grabbing a satellite, maybe for cleaning, but also for maneuvering a satellite. You can take over another satellite. So I think it's something which, the technology are very similar. Let's say, player are the same. And also, based on your question, your first question about the new space and so on, what we see is a lot that also the defense are looking at the new space, the player, to disrupt also, to introduce more innovative services into the space, in the defense territory, which was mainly led by large prime. So we see really also let's say, the impact of the new space transformation and revolution also benefiting also the defense sector. And it's a very, very interesting field.
Okay. Let's move on to Latitude. Could you give us an overview of this company that you've built in 2019, I think?
Yep, absolutely. We launched the company in 2019. We're now 140 based in Reims, a few minutes from Paris by train, and beautiful city of Champagne. And we build rockets. That is our main activity. But we built the company for much broader reason. Our reason is basically we want to build the next-gen space infrastructure that will allow humanity and mankind to basically work in space, develop things in space, create value in space, explore space. And for that, launch is one of the most important verticals, as it is incredibly expensive. It takes a lot of time. There is a lot of barriers for entry. So we started with this, and we started with a market that is under served right now, which is the very small satellites, so less than 200 kilograms, and they need a lot of dedicated rides. Some of them can basically use normal transportation services when they are not rushed and when price is the most important factor. But sometimes you need your package delivered in a few hours, and that's what we provide to our customers. Very, very, very rapid launch at a very competitive price worldwide. So that's the main step.
So how do you actually bring those costs actually down? What do you do at Latitude to bring the cost lower? Is it an industrial method? Is it the product itself that is made in different materials? I don't know. What is the package here?
Great question. It's the biggest challenge, because building a rocket is hard enough, but it is doable. France has done it. A lot of countries have done it. Still, you can count them on your hands, but still. However, making a rocket that actually can make profits is incredibly hard. I'd say SpaceX is probably the first one in history to have done that. And especially when you go into very small rockets, because now you're more expensive because your rocket is way smaller, but your electronics still cost the same and stuff like this. So you have to find ways to make the rocket equation work. And so how we do that? Yes, we have a few ways to do that. First is keep it simple. We do not reinvent the wheel at Latitude on many things that do not need us to reinvent the wheels. The tanks, for example, they're just in aluminum. We use very normal techniques with machines that are less than just a few hundred Ks. And so we can make all the tanks ourselves, and we do everything, not everything, but a lot of stuff in-house. And everything we don't do in-house are components off the shelf to reduce costs. We 3D print our rocket engines, so the full rocket engines are 3D printed in metallic printers, top of their class, and we built some of the most advanced and cheap engine in the market, like 5 times cheaper than some competitors, even in Europe, thanks to that. And all of that brings the cost down. Also operations, we have a lot of nice software and hardware combined to divide by 2 the cost of operations so that we can, first of all, well, make money, but also operate more rockets per year. We aim for 50 launches per year, which is very hard to achieve. So that's...
And just for the audience, you say your rockets are quite small, but just to picture them, they're like 20 meters tall, right? It's not something you'd put in your living room.
Yeah, it's a small for the space industry. So yeah, 20 meters tall, 1.5 meters wide. To give you an example, Ariane 5 was about 55 meters tall, right, and way wider. Yeah, it takes a lot of energy to put anything in space. You have to basically input a speed of around 9.6 kilometers per second so about Mach 25 to satellites to make it orbit the Earth. So yeah, basically we only put in orbit less than 1% of the overall vehicle mass. That's how much energy we need.
You do, are the rockets actually reusable, or?
Not that one,
no?
Not that one, because it's incredibly small and we need every bit of energy. And we could make it reusable. It would just make the business not profitable, right, at all, like about a factor 3 not profitable. So we don't see the interest with that. Our customers need launches. That's all they need, and we need to make money so that our customers can launch their satellites and yeah, on the long term. But next rocket's going to be profitable. Going to be reusable. And
so would you say that there is enough space for everybody in this industry to grow, or no? There's a feeling that there's quite a few companies doing launch vehicles, and are we going to have like a big wave of consolidation in that sector, and then who are the ones who are actually going to win this?
Well, I'm not going to make a list. I have my ideas on this. Yes, absolutely. There are too many players, which is normal. We are kind of shocked in the space industry because of this, because we've always created the big companies, and we've always, given the contracts to the primes so that we are sure they're fine and they don't crash. Yeah, but look at any other. I mean, you know more about startups than I do. You funded so many of them,
especially some in the past,
and created so many of them. And okay, when you worked in the energy, a lot of companies were created, and some of them crashed, and that's normal, that's healthy, that's how market gets competitive, and we need to get competitive in Europe. So
no, but you will be part of the survivor, I'm sure. That's why I'm supporting Latitude.
Yeah, of course.
But it's clear that the path will be long. You have a roadmap. So now you have your rocket, your 20-meter rocket for 200-kilo payload. But then there will be other phases.
Perhaps bigger rockets.
I'm sure you will be part. You will be part of a European set that will propose solutions for heavy launch in the future.
Probably, yeah. And so, yeah, consolidation is something. It's going to be, I think, one of the main opportunities. And some companies will die, and that's also normal.
So one additional thing that probably is necessary for your business and many other businesses to work is that, these satellites that you're sending in space, they also need to make money, right? They need to have a profitable business. And I mean, I'm a financial analyst. I know for a fact that it's a very capex-heavy business, very difficult to make money in these big constellation businesses. How do you actually make a business like that profitable? How do you actually improve maybe the cost of maintenance, or what are the main levers that you might have to make it work?
I mean, I can answer some of that. It's about the use case, because we talked about consolidation and what would be the natural acquirer for some startup like that. And I think it's going to depend on the use case, because it could be acquired by bank, it could be acquired by infrastructure group. I mean, it's going to depend on the use case. For example, we invested in a startup that's called Water, that monitor the carbon emission from space. We use it at an airport, but a bank tomorrow could use it, for example, to try to finance some of the industrial player by monitoring, having a third party telling the truth about what they are doing and what are the emission. So yeah, it could be a bank, it could be an industrial player. I don't think one's going to consolidate the whole market. So depending on the use case, you could have different acquirer.
We are at the beginning. So and the number of satellites in orbit will be multiplied by 10 in the coming 7 years. Now it's 10,000. So okay, will be almost 100,000 by the end of the decade. So they need to be manufactured by low-cost industrial manufacturer. And those guys, they are newcomers, new firms, and with a low-cost and entrepreneurial spirit. And so they will be profitable, for sure. And same for the rocketry. Then also, there will be constellations on a certain use case, not maybe with like thousands of satellites, but like several dozens, 200 to 800. We call that mega constellation, above 100, I think. And they will become, in a way, monopolies. They will hold a kind of monopolistic infrastructure for several years, and they will make a fortune, and they will be acquired by infrastructure funds, by industrial groups. But of course, not all of them will win.
It's already the case with SpaceX. They hold like more than 50% of the whole constellation around Earth.
90% of satellites.
Maybe one point that I would like to add is that, as I was saying at the beginning, we see this big change of the new space and so on. So we have the institution, of course, the European Space Agency is really driving this change. We start really injecting this cultural change. We stop developing new infrastructure. We are focused on developing new market. This is essential. So the question is really, going back to your report that you mentioned, the World Economic Forum report, when we participate, when we contribute to this reflection with the different partners, what was interesting, we were reflecting, really starting from why we are putting all these things in space. Why do we need a satellite? Why we need a rocket? And the reason is really the first clear market there is the market on the Earth. How space is improving the technology today. It is improving the life, it's creating value. And this is important because, of course, a lot of this measurement that can be done from space can also be done on Earth, as you were saying before. But the question is that the global coverage, the added value and the economical scale of the satellite will bring another value. So we are really pushing company to focus on their customer and to stop thinking too much about, of course, technology is important. We have a big obligation to support the, let's say, the development and to secure the, let's say, the critical technology for Europe. However, what is also important is really to work and try to see with existing technology, what are the, let's say, the business case, the additional business case that we can do. And in this report in particular, what I like it a lot, there is an assessment on the space economy, what we call the downstream, but is also what are there is an analysis of what are the downstream application within a reach. So we don't need additional technology. We just need to do business development of the same data. And this somehow you can scale it up, starting from the data, from the satellite, what are the activities that we can do, from the rockets, from the technology, but also from the supply chain, how much we can improve. And this is somehow what are the different agencies we are doing really to stimulate this mindset, this transition.
That makes sense. You mentioned 100,000 satellites within 10 years in the skies. Isn't that complete overcrowding? Well, is there accident risk? Is there pollution risk there?
The beauty with space is that you have a lot of space.
Right.
But it's true that we all have a vision of the Earth surrounded by objects, and it's a nightmare. It could be. So the good news is that there are a lot of initiatives to map all those objects, not only the satellites, but also the debris. There are more than 1 million debris above 1 centimeter or 3 centimeter size, so it's really a problem. And might increase with time. So there you can map those debris, these objects in orbit with terrestrial telescopes, with in-orbit telescopes, with radars, and it's important that Europe has its own solution to be more sovereign and independent. At the moment, most of that information is coming from a squadron of the US Air Force, which generously provides that feed, but maybe not all the feed to European European players. So it's urgent that we have that, and we have invested in several ventures in that field. Yeah.
Okay. So there's already a strategy for space cleaning and debris.
ESA is also at the forefront of that.
Yeah. I mean, that's clearly one of the questions we always get, right? Space is pollution,
Well, you just calculate the volume, from 500 kilometers to 1,500 kilometers. Very easy, this is a high school calculation. You will see it's one object, even if there are 1 million debris and 100,000 satellites, it's one object every cube of 75 miles of,
Yeah,
it's okay.
Space is empty, basically. No, space is empty. I would just add.
Oh, it's not okay. You just
No.
need to monitor
I was gonna
and avoid being crushed, because if you crush, it's finished.
Yeah, exactly. And no, Charles is right. We've sent in the past 60 years a lot of objects that are now becoming debris. And it's mainly everything that have been launched really except the last 5 years. So we were not really concerned too much about the future of these objects. It depends on who and where, but so these are a problem, and we cannot do a lot about them. I think, yes, there are initiatives to sweep out the very dangerous ones. Let's be honest, we're not going to remove all the objects from space, and Earth's atmosphere is going to do its job over the next 50 years to clean it up naturally. Now it is what we can do with the new objects, and they all have to be, yes, detectable, identified, followed. They have to follow the rules, the regulations, and also they have to be able to move and to deorbit themselves at the end of the mission. And if we do that, we can manage. Basically, we have just highways. We need to put steering wheels on and brakes on the exactly, yeah.
Maybe on this point, this is it's a not super hot topic for us. We are working a lot, and we also try to influence as much as we can the all players. So we create a zero debris charter that has been signed, I think almost hundreds of companies in Europe that really engage to, let's say, to debride their object. So if they put something in orbit, especially in the low Earth orbit, to remove it within the time is 20 years, but also to don't increase the number of debris, really, because you can lose part, and even when they re-entry, they need to use really new technology in order to be sure that not big part fell on Earth. So there is a lot of attention on this. We have a big program, it's called the Space Safety, which is really focused on the tracking, focusing also on the supporting the debris removal, but even more and more, what is happening is also the transportation in space, how we can move from one point to another, how we can reuse satellites that are already up there, and manufacturing also in orbit. So.
And I guess there's, maybe this is a silly question, but how easy would it be for, let's say, a rogue actor to blow a satellite in LEO, and then the debris goes everywhere and end up with a chain reaction of satellite destruction? How credible is a scenario like this, actually?
I'd say it is credible in some ways. It is not that easy to do. You will not see that from I would say, normal space country, because they have regulations and their space agencies have signed all the treaties. So the objects are, again, regulated. So now you're talking about other countries or other rogue actors that have a capability to launch into space without any control over the objects that are inside the fairing. That's a very low probability. Now imagine we have Iran and probably North Korea in a few. They're still kind of doing it, but probably Pakistan, who knows? And then, how easy is it to blow something up? Again, it's hard, but you only need a small object. You don't need to spend hundreds of millions to do that. What is difficult is actually the aiming technology. It is very hard to intercept something in space.
You mentioned Russia, but they did it a couple of years ago. They blew one of their satellites. They blew one of the satellites, and then some debris were found.
Tells us that they have approached one of our satellites.
China does it, knows how to do it. Russia does. India does. Europe probably does. We just don't do it. And the United States also know how to do this.
But
officially.
There's been, I think it was a Chinese missile, blow up a satellite in 2009.
Right.
And you see really the effect of this on the number of debris. There was a really big spike. And what has happened, a few months after, there was a Russian dead satellite impacting an Iridium satellite, which was an active one.
Yes.
And there was another big shock on the number of debris. So I think we are a little bit not at the point of gravity, if you remember the Hollywood movie, where there is the chain of event of destroying everything that was around for the, let's say, for this continuous, let's say, contact between satellite. We are not there yet, but we can be very close. Huh?
Yeah, especially in the conflict. Sorry, but especially in the conflict where the number one strategy is how do you say it in English? To basically privatization.
Privatization?
Oh, it works. All right, my bad. No, but in the sense like you do not. Like you denying access to space to the country you're facing, which goes through destroying all the space factories, all the satellites, buildings capabilities, the launch pads, and of course you deny also the capability in space. So you either
you act against your own interest if you do that. So let's not maybe do too much fantasy.
But it happened in Ukraine. So.
We should maybe just add, to keep scaring people, we should maybe just add that only a 1 centimeter debris can have catastrophic consequences on the ISS, for example, or you could have like a proper accident just with a 1 centimeter debris hitting the platform.
Not 1 centimeter, to be honest. Right. It's a bit too small. But yes, you can pierce. I don't know what's the limit.
Where it,
but no, the ISS is being hit. No, but the ISS is being hit every month by objects. Right. So no, not 1 centimeter. But yeah, if you take probably a small CubeSat, it can do it. Yeah.
So better mapping. Optics to follow all the objects, and then maneuver to circumvent this event, potential catastrophic event. That's the future. So a lot of in-orbit services, propulsion in orbit. And
I was going to ask, that's something that is actually very important, like propulsion of a satellite. There's a lot of innovation with electric thrusters as well.
We have invested at expansion. We have invested in 3 ventures involved in propulsion in orbit. This is very important.
And also
ionic, electric.
It is also a way to maintain your satellites longer in space as well, and therefore making the whole thing cheaper as well.
And also satellites to be able to deorbit themselves in line with the future European space law.
Right. Yeah, that's a very interesting vertical for sure. I would like to talk a little bit about financing. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of financing need in this industry. How easy is it, Gianluigi, to actually bring private investors to the table? What are you guys doing concretely to de-risk this space for these kind of investors?
Great question. It's part of my core activity, and I mean, maybe just to give you a few numbers. I mean, in 2021, when we launched the activity of the commercialization, we created a new department. There was a commercialization on the top of our agenda from space. There were 13 billion private investing in space globally. And in Europe was 600 million. Last year, we were around, for the second year, around 1 billion in Europe. So we almost doubled for 2 years. Also in 2022 was 1 billion. However, in the US, is decreasing, but now we start to see that it is increasing again. So we see that somehow the European ecosystem, base of talent, a base of a lot of bright entrepreneurs have started really to jump from university to try to gather together, and this is also important that we have created a large network of business incubation center across Europe, where today we have 30 centers which support the creation of 250 startups a year. What is also interesting is somehow we see many good companies and many investors interested. There are some specialized investors like Charles or in the expansion, but there are also other funds working in the deep tech, in the green financing, which are very interesting in investing in space. What is the big challenge is after the first seed investor, the Series A, what are the, let's say, the possibility to help the company growing, and therefore what is missing, what we see more and more late stage investors supporting, let's say, the growth of the company. Therefore, at the agency level, what we try to do is to create more and more service contract, which allows to have revenues. I created 2 years ago a marketplace to simulate really B2B deals, aggregated demand and aggregated offer. And we do a lot of, let's say, capacity building. We try to help company investors to understand that the space is not too risky anymore. There are opportunities, and also we put all our know-how at the disposal of the investors to try to support them in due diligence. And last but not least, also we share with them, let's say, the good stories. So a company that have been, let's say, finished incubation in our incubation center, or company that have finished developing a technology under our contract. Therefore, there is a sort of, de-risking of the possible, let's say, investment due to the fact that the space agency has been overseeing the technical development and is supporting the company forward.
It's interesting because you talked about the difference between the US and the European environment, and I think the Europe catch up a little bit on the US. It used to be only in the US with the whole ecosystem around startups, and there's been a tremendous development in Europe. And when you take, for example, climate tech, because it's something that we monitor well at ADP, last quarter, the amount of money injection in startups was almost equal from the Europe side and the US side. So the development of the whole ecosystem around, with funds specialized in deep tech, with also some industrial players that have started corporate venture capital that pour money into new projects, has helped to develop this whole ecosystem that was, a bit late compared to the US, but is catching up.
I was actually going to ask you, how do we compare overall with our American friends? I mean, I have in mind these guys are sending billions of dollars in space, and for us it's maybe a few $100 million. I don't know. Is that still correct?
It's like 1 billion to 3 billion now. So it's unbalanced, but it's not as unbalanced that it was, and we are catching up. So we have now specialized funds, like we do. That creates a leverage effect, and it brings credibility to other VC funds, to CVCs, and then we are developing, and that's great. The European Space Agency is doing that. Programs that do not hesitate now to purchase from new space players. The French National Space Agency is doing also that. Same for the German. You have also now in the Draghi report, you have now an idea which I think is very interesting. I was a little bit surprised to see that, but great. Let's take it. It's called, it would be, they propose a multi-purpose space industrial fund that would allow the European Commission to act as an anchor customer for space players to buy their products or their services. That is also key, because it's true that the first customers are always the most difficult to catch, although there are some courageous, brave industrial groups that can be there. But if you know, the big institutional players can give the tone, and then the other follow, and then for the venture it's the best. If revenues are the best, because then it is the financing, frankly.
So, Stanislas, I believe you've raised a total of 55 million with your company, and 30 million recently.
Yeah, total. In pure equity, I think it's about 38, something like this. Yeah.
And I was going to say, I always ask that question to entrepreneurs, but can we actually do in France without American capital? Is it easy to actually get where you want to be without our American friends? It's a difficult one. Be careful what you're going to say.
I would say yes.
Okay, just from not right now, I'll be very honest, and from everything we've seen, not right now. And if you don't do, if you do it without the US, you'll do it with the Saudi Arabians and Qatar,
right?
So or Singapore. Now the question is that such a big deal? The big deal is you don't want to become, U.S. company or stuff like that. You need to keep that European sovereignty and aspect to your company. But I think we have to be realistic. If you need to raise 600 million, you're not going to do it in Europe.
Right.
Let's see. Let's give the time to Charles to
but
close the 300 million.
Having said that, having a U.S. investor is not absurd, as the U.S. market is the biggest in the world.
Just 40% of all the market.
So it makes not bad to have a U.S. shareholder, tiny, that helps you to penetrate the U.S. market.
It's not crazy to have 10% of your capital in the U.S.
Right. And most of the time, it's not about really the start of the company, but on more later stage. And this is where we need Americans to do big exits, because we can fund early stage round until a certain point. And for example, the public bank has done tremendous work on investing and financing some of the great startup in Europe. But when we look at the exits, you've got only two choices. Either you exit with a big corporate, or you go with an IPO. And for Europe, the big acquirer are most American for now.
I think it's also very important to reflect about what was mentioned about the market. I mean, space is a global market by definition. So of course you can be supported by Europe, your own nation, but it's we don't see any successful company that just focus on the domestic market. And moreover, in Europe, what we are doing with the other European, let's say, player is really to work together to aggregate the public demand. And this is already, if you put all the demand together, national, European, and so on, it's quite, let's say, quite a large part of the market. However, we want that, let's say, European companies are successful, are competitive worldwide. So we do need to have partnership in different countries, not only in the US, but as you mentioned, India, the Middle East, Asia, China, and so on. Of course, the relation now, it's a little bit, whether they take control of the company or not. But at the end of the day, we need to be open. As I was saying before, a satellite, for instance, is orbit everywhere.
Yeah.
So and
if we want to build an international leader, we need to be working with other countries. Basically, SpaceX has seen investment from every country.
I want to ask one last question before we switch to a conclusion. Maybe to you, Charles. How do you know when you invest in all these companies? How do you know what's going to work?
The magic slide.
How do you do it?
Well, people, okay. Then size of the market, because we are still in deep tech and early stage, so we need to make a big multiple to compensate the risk. Technology, and then alchemy among the founders. So again, management, human factor is the most important, in fact. But technology, market, human.
An approach for you?
Almost, and also the potential business application. I mean, you need revenue at some point. You cannot finance, for a very long period of time without earning some money at the end. So yeah, business application.
What kind of horizon do you look at?
I mean, we're typically, as a CVC, invest like a VC fund. So we financially behave like a VC. So we have most of the same horizon, like a five-year horizon. But we have the ability to stay a little longer. But we don't pursue that way. I mean, we're gonna exit as the same way as the financial investor because we behave financially like financial investors.
5 years, that's what you got?
No, actually, my investors are big, more long
Might
term.
be a little bit longer, but that's fine.
It depends on the case, but
Well,
most of the time.
Gentlemen, we're getting to the end. I would like to invite to the table my colleague Laurence Porruncini to give us a few words of conclusion.
Thank you. First, hi everyone. Thanks for joining today, and what a great discussions we had today so far. And I want to give a big shout out to everyone to our speaker first for sharing their insight on new space. It's clear that this is a game changer with new application, and I will not do once again the debate, but we see that there will have many impacts in very different direction in all industries, from agriculture, security, transportation, and not only and far beyond that. We can see that it's not just about tech, but also it's going to reshape the entire industries, the entire societies, and how the societies will grow and maintain their independence. So we can ensure that new space is fundamentally disruptive. How big is it disruptive? Number one, you mentioned it, talented people, and of course we have talented people here, and we do believe that is the first number one game changer issue. Number two, we can say speed and efficiency. You mentioned profitability or figures would be important. Unlike traditional industries, new space is all about agility and fresh ideas. So new players are coming in and changing the game. And we are very pleased to have that. And as a bank, for us, is very essential for us. And number three, funding. That was the last question, but we may have the next debate on that. For sure, access to capital is crucial. It's evolving fast. At the beginning, we were talking about subsidies. Now we are not talking about subsidies. We are talking about private funding, access to capital. And as a bank, we totally agree on that. So for us, with all this potential, there are big challenges, especially on the financing and the funding, and funding is one of them. It's a huge one. So as we look ahead, the need for capital in the new space is going huge, and we see that, and you mentioned it, new developments, new services. You need to de-risk the sectors, but we also need to be intelligent and agile in terms of financing solution. First, providing late-stage capital, and of course, we do have some late-stage investors also in Europe, not only in the US. We need to be creative as a bank or as a funding institution. First of all, we do believe that the bond market could be one of them, not only now, but in one day. First, of course, it's equity late-stage financing, but you mentioned it very clearly. We do believe that sustainability is a very big priority for investors, and green financing, I think, will be one of the solutions. So we do agree that because green is also it's not only a debate, it's also a fact, and to attract investors or to find new solutions, we need to think about that, and we will be there to create green financing solutions. So for sure, also you mentioned it, international cooperation. We are not talking about Europe, France versus US, China, India, and whatever, but international cooperation between banks, investors, I think will be crucial too, and we do believe that will be the next stage for the industry. So To wrap up, I just want to thank you, all of you. And we think and we do see that new space has a huge potential. So we will be happy to have this discussion together. And of course, it's just a start. So maybe if we have some questions, we will do the Q&A sessions. But of course, the replay will be available, and we feel free to reach out to us if you need information. Thanks a lot.
We actually have a question on you mentioned regulation. Mm-hmm. And the question was, can all these countries internationally agree together on some common regulation, in particular to avoid overcrowding, or because it seems like the Americans are doing their things, the Europeans are doing their thing, the Chinese are doing their things. How do you all get on and work together to a common objective?
I mean, we did it with the whole air industry, so why not with the space industry? I mean,
I can say that in France we have a very clear regulation. We have in 2003, I think in June 2003, they published a law called the Space Law. It's very clear, and it has been recently amended with some provisions. And there is also a decree and everything. It's very precise. In your field, for instance, in constellation field as well, it's extremely precise. And I think this framework is being used for the European Space Law, which is in preparation. So we maybe are too good in regulation in Europe, but let's say at least we will have a very clear legal framework for space operations.
Just to say at the beginning of the space race, if you want, there was some treatment that were the outside treatment, which was basically providing some rules of the game for the space player. However, was over 60 years ago. So what we see more and more different countries presenting their own national law to really identify also the liability, what is happening up there, to avoid to reduce the probability of what we just mentioned before. And the last point is really, as Charles mentioned, the European Commission have been working on a European space law. It's not simple. Now we see it's a big, let's say, discussion. And as you know, this cannot be all in Europe, but Europe can lead the way.
Maybe we have time for one last. There's a question about the consequences of the Ukrainian situation for the space industry, in particular the launch vehicle sector. Maybe that's for you, Stan.
Consequences in general for the space industry were pretty great, to be honest. It feels bad to say it, but it was good, because we've been saying, and especially the different space commons in all the countries. I had a meeting 2 years before the start of the Ukraine war with 2 colonels from the French Space Command. And they were not talking about Ukraine. They talked to me about if 2 countries that have access to space fight, this is how it's going to go. It happened exactly like they described it to me in the first week. So and then we had to basically supply, when we say we, the West, and especially the US, had to supply a lot of information. And it was, let's say, a good realization, and not only in the space industry, that we are not safe anymore. We're not in a kiddie world where everyone is nice and we can treat with dictators. So what it pushed every country and companies to do is to invest massively into the space industry and realize the importance of space data into our survival, of our way of life, of our freedom. And so it was an incredible push. And now people are building more and more dual-use satellites, for example. And to go back on the rocket side, let's say what we've seen is Russia destroyed or neutralized every space assets in Ukraine, especially first the rocket factories, Yushnoye especially, or Yushmash in the propulsion business. also when it comes to satellites and also when it comes to every satellites in space. So they rendered inactive and operate the Ukrainian activities, space activities. What it showed is we need on the launch side the capability to relaunch very rapidly space assets to because we're not going to have every time the US backing us. We're not going to have every time.
Yeah, but we can also say that, okay, it was a big shock in February, March 22. But now, I mean, 2 years later, we now have Ariane 6 back. We have a heavy launcher. We have a Vega also, which is there. So, of course, we don't have Soyuz anymore, but maybe we'll have a European player for the mid-size payloads. So I think it was a problem. It was a big problem during the last 2 years, but now I think we are back. Okay.
Yeah, so it was a bit of a problem.
Finalize on a positive note.
No, yeah, positive note. We need more space capability. We need to relaunch more, basically.
All right. Well, I think this will conclude our session. I could be asking you questions for 2 more hours, I'm sure. I want to thank you very much for your time and for coming here to our studio today. It was really a pleasure to have that conversation with you guys, and best of luck with your various missions, endeavors, and investment going forward. And from us, goodbye.